If you can set your business up in a way where it's doing a lot of work for you in the background and not requiring you to always be on, always to be available, always having to show up online.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi.
It's so great to see you again. I'm honored to have you on my podcast. And just from listening from your podcast, whoever's out there, you have to check it out. We'll get into that too later on. But I feel like I even know you a little bit more. But yes, I feel like we already have a rapport, even though we officially only had like one short chat about
Yes.
a month ago. But I can't wait to talk to you and hear your insights. And I'm sure all the moms out there will get some more rich gems from you. But let's start with a little bit about your background. Can you tell us like what a little bit about you, how you got like what got you into this journey?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I am a wife. I'm a mom. I have two little ones. They're both of their birthdays are April. So they'll be turning 2 and 4. But they're honestly my reason why I pursued entrepreneurship. I had my son at the height of the pandemic, so April 2020. And while I was on maternity leave, I was just like, I can't imagine going back to a 9 to 5 because at that time I was working as a preschool director. And prior to having him and getting pregnant with him, that job required a lot of me just constantly being on call and, long days and everything. And I was just like, yeah, I can't do that. Like, I can't go back to that now that I'm a mom. And so it happened to work out that my job shut down completely during the pandemic. And so I didn't have a job to return to. So I became a stay-at-home mom and, absolutely love that. Just being able to see, all of those first moments with my son when he took his first steps, said his first words and everything. But I found myself like getting lost in motherhood. And I was like, I need something for me. And so I started off trying to be a mom influencer. I got a few little brand deals where like they would send my son clothes and we would do like the pictures for Instagram and all of that. But I was like, yeah, that's not really me. So it started sharing my journey being a first-time mom in the pandemic. So like started a blog and really enjoyed doing that, especially building out my website. And so I was like, maybe I can do something with this. Maybe I can support other women, with this. And so just going down the Google rabbit hole, literally like learning more about the online space and being a virtual assistant. And so I decided to pursue being a virtual assistant, launched my virtual assistant business April 2021. Fun fact, I was pregnant with my daughter at the time. So I had a 1-year-old running around. I was 12 weeks pregnant with my daughter, and I decided it would be a great time to start a business. And so that was a very fun adventure, just navigating all of that. But I absolutely loved it. My business at that time was called the Savvy VA Mama, and I was supporting other mom business owners, like handling all of their needs, whether that was general admin, whether that was like blog and copywriting, web design, literally doing all of the things. And that business grew quickly, but I quickly realized I didn't have the capacity to maintain that. Like it wasn't realistic for me as a mom of two little ones. And so right before I had my daughter, I was like, okay, I need a niche down. I need to find something that will give me more flexibility. And so at that time, I was an avid podcast listener. And I was like, okay, who supports these women with producing their podcast? Because like, I can't imagine they're doing it all on their own. And so again, going down the Google rabbit hole, I discovered podcast management. specifically Lauren Wright, and she has a podcast manager program. And what I really love was that she was a stay-at-home mom. I think at that time she only had two daughters, and she really just highlighted how it was possible for her to build this business and still be the present mom that she wanted to be, like, having her daughters home with her and actively involved with their lives and doing all of these things with them. And so I was like, okay, that's what I need. And so I signed up for her program, completed her course probably about a week before I went into labor with my daughter.
Wow.
And so after I had my daughter, I moved into podcast management. I was able to take one of my VA clients and make her a podcast management client because she happened to have a podcast. And so it was like a smooth transition for me. And absolutely love that, being able to support different women with launching and producing their podcast. But one of the things I quickly discovered with a lot of my clients was that they weren't monetizing their podcast with their own offers. Their podcast was kind of like this separate thing, even though they talked a lot about what they did in their businesses, but it was still kind of separate. And so I kind of made it my mission to be like, hey, let's make your podcast part of your marketing strategy. Let's literally use your podcast to funnel your listeners into your paid offers and programs. And so, really just supporting women with strategically doing that, figuring out what type of content to create, what their call to actions should be, and different things like that. And so that kind of became my focus, and I absolutely love that. But then I had another life transition, so to speak. So towards the end of 2023, we had a couple of things happen. My daughter had a seizure. My son, we found out he was diagnosed with autism. And so it was a lot going on. And I realized, okay, although I love podcast management, realistically, based on this current season of my life, it's not something that makes sense for me right now. And so at that time, I had technically already been coaching clients, but I didn't call myself a coach. I was very hesitant to, actually do that because I felt like I needed a certification and all of these things. But my clients called me their coach. I've even had one client say, like, you're the first coach I've ever worked with. And I was like, well, I never said I was a coach, but okay. And so I really just more so like really just listening to God and him leading me to really step into coaching, and kind of what made pushed me over the edge, so to speak. One of my podcast listeners reached out to me and she was like, I know you support podcasters, but do you support podcasters with actually building out an offer to monetize their podcast, like with their own offer? And I was like, well, I haven't officially done that, but I'm willing to support you with that. Like, I built out my own offers and I've supported other clients with their offers and everything. And so that podcast listener, who's now a client, she kind of inspired my Life and Seasons coaching. And I really just leaned into that and looking at what other moms needed. And one of the biggest things I saw was that they were struggling to really build a business with their kids at home and figuring out how to do it in a way that wasn't going to lead to burnout, that wasn't going to lead to overwhelm, that wasn't going to lead to mom guilt, really trying to figure out, how do I make both work? And so that's what I'm doing now, is really supporting moms with building a business that fits their current season of life. And the thing is that seasons of life, they change all the time. And so really knowing when you need to make that pivot, when you need to make that shift, when you have the capacity to do more, when you have the capacity to do less, like really being in tune with that. So that way you aren't feeling stressed, trying to build a business, trying to be a mom, trying to be a wife, trying to do all of the things. So yeah, that's kind of like my journey as an entrepreneur and all of that good stuff.
Wow, yeah, even in that, there's so many things that I feel like you are so like real because I see a lot of I feel like a lot of mom influencers, it's hard for me to relate to them because they seem so perfect. And like I'm just wondering, like, how do they manage to do this and that? And then but you make the journey seem real. Like I was listening to an episode where you said like and you even mentioned this now, realizing your capacity. And that was something that I needed to hear because we are limited with like the amount of things we can do. Like we can't make more hours in the day. And so
Yeah.
I like the way you think of it. Like, look, this is the time that you have. Be realistic with the time that you have and do what you can within that time frame, and don't make it seem like you can do anything that you want, and you have enough time in the day. Like, it makes it seem doable and achievable when you think about it like that. And there was something that I liked how you said like prioritize the marketing strategies that you actually enjoy. And that
Mm.
was something also that I needed to hear because I was forced like I feel like I'm so similar. I had kind of the same experience that you had because
Mm.
I had my son at the end of the pandemic in 2022, and I
Mhm.
went on maternity leave, and that's when I was like, "How can I leave him after 3 months?" Like, and that's when I said, "Okay, Saríce, like, you're gonna do this. You're gonna be, going to start your own business and be an entrepreneur and make this work." So that was something that I was like forcing myself. I thought I had to make reels, and I hate. First of all, I don't even like Instagram, and I was just forcing myself. And you can tell when it's forced because it's hard to be consistent, and it feels like such a drag. And when I kind of like, if I wish I would have heard this before, like you'd focus on the
Mhm.
things that you enjoy because I liked him, right? So that's why I said, okay, I'm going to start a blog. I actually enjoy YouTube. So I'm going to put the blog on YouTube. So yeah, these are some things that I feel like a lot of moms need to hear right now. I'm serious when I say like, you're like the first one that sounds so like realistic. Like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do because when I started my business, like you said, there weren't a lot of people sharing like the real raw truth of running a business as a mom.
Right.
And it's like when we're starting out, we don't have a whole team supporting us. It's just
Yeah.
us. And like, yes, we want to work towards that, but like talk to me about what it's like as a solopreneur when I have, toddlers running around at home, trying to do all of the things, and so that's why I like to be transparent about my journey, like letting other moms know, like, hey, I have those hard days too. I have those days where literally I was on a call with a client and my daughter closed my laptop while I was
Yeah.
and
Yes,
it's
that's
like
how.
that's the truth. Like that's gonna happen with little ones at home. And there's gonna be those weeks where they're teething, someone's sick, like all of these things. And so that's why, like, for me, when I'm working with my clients, I'm like, be real about what your current capacity is. Look at everything that's going on, not just in that moment, but everything that could even possibly happen. Starting in October, that's sick season. That's everybody getting sick. Okay, so maybe we need a plan for less during those times. Like just really looking at all of those things so that way you aren't stressed. You aren't trying to do all of these things. You're not running yourself into the ground, but you're still, making progress in your business. You're still moving the needle forward and everything. And so I think it's just really important being realistic about your expectations and again, looking at what your capacity is.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like I was like following some like social media people that made it seem like it's a lot easier, and yeah, you have time and you can stay up, and but yeah, there's a we all of us have a our capacity. And another thing I wanted to ask you was something that I noticed about you is that you with so much grace, you just say, "Yeah, I tried this and then I pivoted." And how did you know? Like when did you know and how like sometimes I find that it's like hard for me. I don't want to feel like I'm quitting something even though I'm like this isn't like realistic. And you seem like you just so many like you told me like 3 pivots that you made already. And how did you just were able to just like release and then go to the next thing? And like what is that, does that come from some prior experience, or are you just that's just like your nature?
Honestly, a lot of mindset stuff comes up with making those pivots, right?
Mhm.
Because you have other people watching you and you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? And so for
Right.
me, it was more so focusing on what is best for me and my family right now. That they are my top priority. They are the reasons why I started this business so I can be home with my kids, but still, contribute to our household financially and everything. And so when I looked at it that way, it made it easier to make those pivots. But also how I did it it's made sense, so to speak. You know, a lot of people start out as a virtual assistant and then they eventually niche down, you know, so it's not surprising there. And I think as service providers, as we work with more clients and different things like that, we are kind of put in different positions in which we are coaching our clients, right? It doesn't always not always just that one thing that we're doing for them. Our clients look to us as the experts. They're going to ask us different questions and we end up somehow coaching them. And so it wasn't so huge of a shift, in my opinion. It was more so just kind of like stepping into that next thing as I grew as a business owner, as I learned more, but also really looking at the needs of my community. I literally had people in my community asking about me coaching them. And so it's like, well, these are the people I'm serving. As long as it's something that's in alignment with what I wanna do and feels right with me, I'm okay with moving in that direction. And so I think that's a big thing too, is just really being in tune with your community and what their needs are. And so those pivots won't be so, you know, out of the box or so like, "Okay, what is she doing?" so to speak.
Yeah.
But again, I think the biggest thing is really knowing your why, and that's gonna help drive you. That's going to help you make those hard decisions.
And that's really smart that you said, like, you listen to the client, because I find that a lot of times, and this is something that I've been learning lately. And I heard another a business coach, Myron Golden, he spoke about this too. He said a lot of people, they want to they want to they want to make their offer or their service what they want the client to have instead of listening to what the client is asking for. And
Mhm.
you did that, even though it wasn't like per se your expertise, that you were at least marketing, but your client had a need and you were like, okay, I'm going to serve her need instead of, forcing my offer or my service upon her. That's really smart that you were able to recognize that and make that pivot. And
Yeah.
something else that I like that you said, when you were telling about your background, is how you also had the insight, or I'm sure you like got this from the, your education that you had,
Mhm.
but marketing and pitching your offer in the podcast, because that's something that I noticed too, that sometimes people are like, I don't even realize they have a business because they talk about, like, they have their podcast and I enjoy it, and then I'll just happen to stumble, like maybe on social media, something like, oh, they sell something, they have a service. And I'm like, how come they don't talk about that on their podcast? And I noticed like some people do, you do that like at the beginning of
Mhm.
yours. So, but yeah, that was funny that you mentioned that, because I'm like, it's so true. And that was something that I was thinking about, like when I was for mine, that like I have to talk about what I actually do. And that was something that I've been guilty of in the past, where like even my sister-in-law told me, yeah, but you don't really tell, like, I don't understand, like, everything you said was amazing and great, but you need to talk about, you need to sell. Do you think that's something that maybe women struggle with more because we feel like selling is like sleazy? Or can you talk on that a bit?
Yes, that's something I see with most women is that we don't wanna come off as salesy, we don't wanna come off as, like, we're trying to force people to do something, and so, one of the ways I support my clients with this is, like, we have to shift our mindset on selling. I look at selling as service. So I know you have a need and I can support you with that need. So I'm going to tell you how I can support you. And so when you look at it that way, you need to be selling because you're doing people a disservice by not telling them how you can help them. And so I get it because it like when we think of selling, we often think of like that sleazy car salesman, and it
Right.
doesn't have to be like that. You know, how I do it in my podcast, when I'm planning out my podcast content, I in a sense reverse engineer my podcast episode. So I think about, okay, what action do I want people to take after they listen to this episode? And it's usually either to opt into one of my offers or if I'm focusing on like promoting a specific freebie to build my email list I'll figure that out. And so based off of that, that's how I plan out my content. And so I create content that educates my listeners on what they need to know in order to make that decision for themselves, whether or not this offer is right for them. I point out, what their pain points are, what their struggles are, but also let them know that I get it. I've been there. I totally relate. And then also just creating content that really addresses those objections. People will have time objections, people will have money objections, people will have objections on whether or not this offer is right for them. And so, really creating that strategic content that gives them all the information they need so they can make an informed decision to move forward with working with me. But it's not me forcing them to work with me. It's not me shoving this down their throat. If you're listening to my podcast, there's something that you believe in your heart that I can support you with. So it's me laying out all of that information so that way you can make that decision on your own, whether or not now is the right time for you to move forward with working with me.
Right. Yeah, and I like that mindset shift, and that was something that I had to work on because, like, I'm a dietitian and nutritionist, and I'm in the health and wellness space. And I literally, like, my job for 5 years was helping people, like, lower their blood
Mhm.
pressure and lose weight, and reverse their diabetes. And I'm helping them, and I don't know why I had a like problem if it's outside of my job to do that
Mhm.
privately. I felt like I think also because I don't know, I'm gonna bring like astrology into this. Like everybody say I'm a sensitive Cancer and I'm a woman and I'm a nurturer. I feel like these things I should be doing like for free, but I need to make a mindset shift. My time is worth money, so I should be like charging accordingly.
Yes, yes. I mean, think about it too. People invest in like iPhones and all these expensive things. And so
Right, that won't
why
get them
can't they,
anything,
yeah, why can't they
right?
invest in your services?
Exactly, and your services is something that'll actually make them money if they implement the
Mhm.
steps, and my services will help them, feel better, have more energy, and yeah, and
Live
so
a
like if
longer
people
life.
live a
Yeah.
longer life, and so if people will spend money on, really less less important things in the grand
Mhm.
scheme of things, yeah. So, but yeah, that's a mind shift that I had to make, and that I'm still working on every day. How do you create that harmony between work and family and marriage? Like, do you have any systems, any times? How does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm really big on one automation. So a lot of the stuff in the back end of my business is automated. So, for instance, when somebody inquires about working with me for one on one coaching, they complete the application. And then I have automations that are set up to send them the next steps. So, if you can really take some time and really like plan out your client process and use a CRM, I use Dubsado, and automate a lot of those things, you don't have to be as hands on. So, really looking at like what you can simplify in your business. So, again, going back to your capacity. So, for instance, I know right now I don't have the capacity to do like weekly Zoom calls with clients. And so, how I've structured my one on one coaching is that we do one Zoom call a month, but outside of that, they have access to me via Voxer during my business hours. So they get a lot of their coaching that way. And it's perfect for my clients. They're busy moms too. They don't have the time to, hop on Zoom calls weekly and different things like that. So, really looking at how you can simplify things in your business, how you can set it up in a way where you're still serving and supporting your clients, but it's not going to require so much of you. So another thing I do is every week I have a CEO day where I just focus on my business. And so those are typically today, Saturdays for me, where my husband, he takes the kids, he's fully responsible for them. He does all of their meals, gets them dressed, does activities with them. And so I just focus on me and my business. And so that's planning content. I'm going to be batch recording my April podcast episodes today. That's, mapping out my emails for April, like doing all of the things that I need to do in my business that allows me to get ahead. And so having that one day a week, it makes a world of a difference. So that way during the week when I have the kids with me, because primarily I'm with them Monday through Friday because my husband works long hours. I'm not feeling that stress or that pressure like, oh, I still need to do this. I still need to do that. I know that Saturday I can catch up on what I need to catch up on, whether that is stuff in my own business, whether that's client work and different things like that. But I think if you can ask for that help, whether that's from a spouse, whether that is, grandma, grandpa, whoever supports you with the kids, where you can have like that dedicated day, or you can split it up over a couple of days, but just having that uninterrupted time to work, it makes a world of a difference. We can get so much done if we're not have to constantly stop and start because, kids need a snack, somebody needs their diaper changed, different things like that. But having that uninterrupted block of time, it helps so much in being able to get ahead and really creating that balance. Because I think, and I don't even want to say balance because it's not a balance, but it's more so taking that pressure off of yourself, being able to know that you're able to get ahead, but also, again, setting those realistic expectations of yourself, not taking on more than you actually have the capacity to do, and then looking at what you can simplify, what you can streamline, what you can automate. And when you do that, you will find that it's not you having to choose between the two. And it's not necessarily you have to create this balance because let's be real, at the end of the day, your family, that's your top priority.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be chosen over your business every day. So it's not really a balance. But if you can set your business up in a way where it's doing a lot of work for you in the background and not requiring you to always be on, always to be available, always having to show up online, when you do that, that creates, in a sense, that harmony. And then the other thing I'll say is that I prioritize long form content over short form content. So like I prioritize my podcast over Instagram because Instagram, I would have to show up way more in order to see the results I want to see. But my podcast, it does the work for me. I publish 2 episodes a week. And like you were saying, you were listening to a few of my episodes and everything. And that's typically when I sign a client for my podcast, they find my podcast, they binge the episodes, and then they take the next step to work with me. So even simplifying your content creation, maybe you don't have the capacity to pour into Instagram the way that you need to. What is something else you can do? And so leveraging that long form content that is searchable, that's discoverable, that you can really utilize SEO to attract those best fit clients. Again, it's not requiring a lot for you. You publish your 2 podcast episodes or your 1 podcast episode a week, and you're, making sure you're doing that keyword research. The right people will find you. They will binge that content. And then they're going to be like, okay, what do I need to do next to work with you? So all of that can be working for you without you having to actually show up.
Wow, I love it. Those are great tips, especially the automation and the CEO day. It's funny because that's something that I started implementing a few months ago. For me, it's Friday and my husband's off, and then like he's with my son, with our son, and then I like go either to a coffee shop somewhere because I find that just changing the scenery a bit because I'm home with
Yes.
my son every day of the week. I get so much done just being in a different environment and plus like having a length of time. I feel like ever since I became a mom, you can't tell me that there's no one more productive than a mom. I get so much more done now in an hour than I did when I was like a college student. And things. I realized
Mhm.
like how much you can achieve in in an hour. And if I have like 3 or 4, oh my gosh. But yeah, we can get a lot done in just a day off.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I highly recommend that too. And what about self-care? Like we talk about like of course as moms, we always like put our families first and especially as nurturers, we want to make sure everyone is good and sometimes I find that like I neglect myself and
Mhm.
I know a lot of moms can relate to that too. And I've been trying to be more intentional because it was funny. Before I had kids, before I had my son, I would tell my clients, like, yeah, you can't like neglect your health. You have to make time for yourself. And then boom, I'm like, now I get it. I understand how like it's easy to like so I have to be so intentional about doing like acts of like wellness for myself, even if it's something small, like just taking a long shower or whatever I can get in, a
Mhm.
walk or something. So what do you do for your self-care?
Yeah, so I schedule in my self-care daily. And so that looks like when my husband gets home, after we have dinner, he takes care of the nighttime routine with the kids, and I go take like an hour-long bubble bath and read a book. Like that is my nightly self-care. And then, other times, this isn't like a every week thing, but sometimes going and doing things with friends. April. So next month, I'm actually going to Nashville for a few days without the kids. So like
Wow.
even just like little stuff like that. But I think if you can schedule in your self-care, it's gonna make it a lot easier to do it daily. So whether that is for you, taking a long shower, taking a bubble bath, going for a walk. For me, like I'm really, working on my health. So making sure to work out in the mornings and everything, just taking that time for myself, but I have to schedule it in. Like, I literally have it on my phone where it's a reminder like, "Hey, it's time to
Yeah.
work out," and
That's a good
everything.
tip. Schedule it in. Whatever
Yeah.
gets scheduled gets done. If it's on my Google Calendar,
Mhm.
then it's
Yes, yes, definitely.
awesome. I love it. Okay, so before we close things out, I want to ask you, like, what are your top 3 tips that you would give for a mompreneur out there that wants to, like, put herself out there more? What would you recommend? Like, I know you talked about prioritizing long form. What would you? I'm like a mom. I'm starting a business. How would you recommend I like get more traction and more visibility? And I know you have a free guide too, so you can shout that out too. Tell us where to find that.
Yeah, so as far as like if you're just starting out and you want to get more visible, I would say look beyond social media. And not to say you can't start off that way, but there are so many ways to get visible. There are, online and in-person networking events. Facebook groups are really great. So if you can, join Facebook groups that your ideal clients are a part of, I would say honestly, Facebook groups are probably the fastest way to get clients because there are people posting, hey, I
Mhm.
need this. Hey, I need that. And so it's just a matter of making sure you stand out and everything. Um, Maybe you're not ready to start a podcast, but like I'm doing right now, you can guest on podcasts. I literally had someone find me, on a podcast I guested on, and we had a discovery call a week after she, listened to that podcast episode.
Wow.
So even that, and it's long form content still. It's evergreen, meaning it has a longer shelf life. So maybe you did that interview a month or so ago, and then somebody finds you further on down the line. It's content that continues to live on. And then collaborations are huge. So getting with other business owners who serve a similar audience as you, whether that's, participating in like virtual summits or events. One of the things I like to do is participate in bundles where basically we all contribute a high value resource and share it with all of our audiences. And you're able to grow your email list that way and get more of your ideal clients on your email list that you can connect with through email. But it's looking beyond social media, I will say, because truthfully, a lot of people are burnt out on social media. And so you're posting this great content, but your ideal clients aren't seeing it because they're like, you know what? I need a break from social media.
Yeah,
They're not
I'm that
scrolling
person. I've
it.
had enough.
Yeah. And so you don't want to limit yourself to that. And then you're like, oh, this is not working. Oh, it's my messaging. When in reality, the right people just aren't seeing your content. So I would say number one is look beyond social media. Number two is, as a mom, you really want to look at what you can simplify. So, like I was saying, simplifying the back end of your business, simplifying your offers, looking at, okay, how I'm have this structure. Does this make sense for my current season of life? Is this realistic for my capacity? You don't have to do what everyone else is doing, especially, your favorite business owners who are popular and everything. You have to remember they have a whole team. So you don't necessarily need to replicate what they're doing. You need to find what works for you. And then I would say the third thing is just to make sure you show yourself grace. I know that,
That part.
that's easier said than done. But again, you have to remember you are a mom, you are running a business, you have all these other responsibilities. So just show yourself grace. Yes, mistakes will happen. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't make you a bad mom. It doesn't make you a bad business owner. It doesn't make you a bad anything. So just show yourself lots of grace.
Wish I heard those 2 years ago. But yes, wow, thank you so much. And tell everybody where we can connect with you, where we can find you and access your resources.
Yeah, so you can come hang out with me on my podcast, Mama Turn Mompreneur. Essentially, this interview is what I talk about all the time on the podcast. Also, you can send me a DM on Instagram if you really enjoyed this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts. My Instagram handle is Mama Turn Mompreneur, and then my website is Mama Turn Mompreneur. All of my free resources are available on there. I have a few different ones. If you are just starting out and you're not sure what in the world you want your business to be, I have a free guide that gives you 50 plus ideas for being a work from home mom, just so you can know what your options are, all of the things that are available. If you already have a business, but maybe you are like feeling overwhelmed with running your business and your time management and productivity is completely off. I have a productivity calendar that really helps you like map out your days, but also like really knowing what to focus on in your business. So that way you are getting more done without having to work 24/7. And then if you do want to start a podcast, I do have a free podcast launch guide. So if you go to mompreneur.com, all of that is available on my website.
I'll definitely be downloading some of those free resources. And thank you so much. I hope we can have this conversation again in the future.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta